if you take an abundance approach to who is worthy of investment and an abundance approach to what that investment might do. So we don't police what they do with the money. If they need to buy interview clothes, great. If you need to buy gas for your car, that's fine too. If you need to get your teeth fixed, do that. I don't care what you do with the money. Are in, if you have a shot at getting this degree that is going to change your life and your economic circumstances, we will help you get there.
Fantastic. So we're starting this podcast called AI for Impact. And I'm Eric Etka. I'm director of Journey House Foundation. And with me is Ruthe Farmer. She's the CEO of Last Mile Education Fund and previously served at CS for All, the National Center for Women in Information Technology, right?
And
And
the Obama White House.
and the Obama White House. I knew there was more. Like, you're
There's a
fascinating.
little bit
There's
more
so
there.
much information. It just can continue. You're going to tell us all about that. What we've been doing is I've personally been reaching out to all these nonprofit leaders to shortcut my own journey of learning, as I've been in the nonprofit world for about 6 weeks now, and I have learned incredible insights. I have found ways to not worry about certain things, focus on this, not and do this instead. But also the people I've met have opened their arms and take me in and say, like, they're all stewards of goodwill. And they're from all different types of businesses and nonprofit organizations. And they all had something different to talk about. So that's what this podcast is going to share, the nonprofit world to other nonprofit leaders, because they've been asking me to now record these conversations because they're so good. So anyway, well, one of the things with when I met you, Ruthe, in the beginning is we had this back and forth within the internet cut out. And, I kind of want to restart that and, give me a little bit of the the timeline of you and the nonprofit and this exciting thing you're doing with technology and underprivileged folks, and then getting them across graduation to a job and changing the economics of that community. Please tell me more.
Sure. So I have been in nonprofits since 2001. I had left a marketing career in the technology sector and um, jumped into Girl Scouts. And at the time, sort of found my perfect combination of I joined Girl Scouts because I care a lot about girls and women having access to leadership and power and earning and opportunity. And then
Right.
right around that time, Intel made a big investment in Girl Scouts to increase the number of girls going into engineering pathways. And so that was marrying my interests in, equality and advancement for women with the one place in the workforce where we weren't seeing women, which was in technology and engineering. And that has become the hyper focus of my career ever since. And I've jumped from Girl Scouts to the National Center for Women in IT, then to the White House, and then Computer Science for All, and then launched this organization really as I would say it's the capstone of all the things I've learned over the last 25 years. And the Last Mile Education Fund is literally focusing on the last mile. And what I have learned is there's a tremendous engine set up to push young people into talent pipelines, but not the equal amount of effort to get them out and into the workforce. And so we're focusing in on that last mile, students who have raised their hand, done the work, made it halfway through, and if money is the issue for them to progress, finish their degree, and move into the workforce, we're here to make that problem
That's
go
so
away.
awesome. So that, for me, when I hear that, I guess the degrees in STEM, science and technology, and that area too. And it's important for people to hear that, because you're right. The vast majority, I guess you're telling me also, is male going through these programs versus the females. And you're able to identify very intelligent females, but underprivileged, who may not have had the opportunity to get through school all the way to graduation, but it doesn't end there.
Yeah,
Be-
we consider our relationship with them when we invest in a student, that's the beginning of our relationship. And we stay in touch with them, we support them, we connect them to other resources. And then ultimately, someday they're going to come back as our volunteers and our donors and our, you know, those that will be in the pipeline hiring the next generation. So it works. I've done it before with other organizations building this kind of longitudinal community. But I do want to make sure you understand, we fund all students, male and female. Um,
You did tell me
and
that. Yes,
we
absolutely.
focus in on a group which people don't realize is the largest untapped pool of talent in the US when it comes to tech, which is low income students. So there's an increasing percentage of K-12 students that are qualified for free lunch, for example. And so the talent pipeline of the US is increasingly coming from poverty. Yet the higher education system of the US was designed for the children of the wealthy. And so what Last Mile is doing is leveling that playing field by being literally the financial safety net for low income kids that affluent kids get from their parents.
Yes. I I'm intrigued by the idea, the longitudinal model that you have done not only in Last Mile, but also others. Can you tell me more about that? Because I think that's important for other nonprofit leaders to understand that as well, that it's not just like right now. There's this entire you have this idea, you have this vision, and you said longitudinal, so I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I actually originally got the idea from being engaged in this Girl Scout program that was focusing in on the science fair. And at the time, the science fair, the International Science and Engineering Fair, was sponsored by Intel. And it was this massive enterprise. Thousands of students would participate all over the world in their like local science fair and then go to their state science fair. And then a handful of them would end up at the big science fair. Yet the organization was only focusing on the like 20 winners. And I was like, why are you only talking to the 20 top winners when you had 20,000 triers? Just because
Wow,
someone
right.
wasn't 15 wasn't winning the International Science Fair at 15 doesn't mean they're not going to become a scientist or become an engineer. And so I saw that going on. And so when I launched what's called aspirations.org, the Aspirations in Computing program, which is now an alumni community of 35,000 young women, when I launched that program, I was like, okay, if we could just find every girl in the US who is expressing any interest in technology and make sure that
Right.
she knows that there's a pathway for her and there are other girls like her. And so we created a recognition program that would give an award to a girl for her aspirations in technology. And then it would bring them to an event where they would be with every other girl in their community. And so while there might be two at your high school, across a whole city, there's 50. And so you're putting all those technically inclined girls in a room, and then they start to talk to each other and connect and get excited because they see peers. And so what was happening once
Wow.
they connected was
That's
more
so fun.
powerful. It was the most powerful part. And so I built Aspirations in Computing, which has now existed since 2007 and has thousands of women, many of whom are now hiring managers at Apple and Google and places like that. It's this big longitudinal community. And we used to joke that it was like a longitudinal group hug because we were constantly supporting them and encouraging them and connecting them with each other. Well, I'm doing exactly the same thing with the Last Mile Education Fund, is that we've funded over nearly 13,000 students now. And we have an online
Wow.
community for them. We have events where they can come meet us. We have them connect at conferences so that it's not just about making sure that they graduate, it's helping them build the professional network that is going to sustain them throughout their career. Nobody's going to get a job and stay in that job for 30 years anymore. That doesn't happen.
Correct.
And the way that people get jobs is through networking.
Yeah, so you're introducing people to each other who would have never ever met, right? They
Yeah,
wouldn't
correct.
without your help, without putting the, conventions together, these seminars together, and you have also instilled with them a hope for the future as well, and like you said, anyone. There that is so important because I think their book, written by Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics, he discussed in the very, very beginning of the book that, like, our self-image that improves, an entire community would improve. And so you're bringing people of underprivileged, and they know they're smart. And maybe they were even so smart that it caused the teachers to be like, I don't want, that could be tough to deal with. I was there, I've done that. And it's fascinating that you also are recognizing that the connections that they make will continue.
The
And then social
connections
media
that they
makes it
make will
easier too.
continue, but I want to circle back to something you said about their self-image, that the number one thing students say about our funding is that it gave them it relieved them from stress, right? They were stressed out because their
Yeah,
car was broken, or they'd fallen off the tightrope they were walking to get through college. And we give them money to help relieve that crisis. But the second thing they say is, the fact that you recognized me and you believed in me gave me more energy to keep going.
right.
And I remember a quote from a student who said, this whole process has made me realize that it's not that I'm not as good as other students. It's that I'm being affected by financial things that are making things harder for me. And so when you struggle, you think, I don't belong here. I'm struggling. This is too hard. And he realized he was struggling because of money, not because the subject was too hard. And once you take away that stress, then he can get better grades and be more focused.
Absolutely. I think because when someone is stressed out about money, that's what they're thinking about. And you're dealing with people whose brains, void of stresses and those other things, can compute and can create and can envision incredible things. It goes all the way. I had a conversation with another CEO that, let's just say, basically is getting clean water to third world countries that don't have water, and they had terrible health and everything. And it dawned on me that, like, we can have water anytime we want. And but once they had the water, he says, they were able to think differently. They would think to the next thing, right? They weren't worried about just water. And if these folks who are super brilliant aren't worried about the stress of money, and they think about it, and have that mental barrier, now it's lifted, they can do even better work in the technology and engineering field.
Well,
Correct?
yeah, basic needs security, right? So if your
Yeah.
basic needs are met, you have food, you have housing, you have reliable transportation, you have access to the internet, and it's much easier to do all the hard things involved in getting a college degree when you have those needs met. We know 63% of our students say they sometimes or always worry about having enough food. 35% of our students are transportation insecure. They don't always have a way to get to school or to work. And
Wow. Yeah.
something like 22% of our students are parents, 59% are first generation college students. So if you think about all of the things that they're managing to try to succeed in a competitive environment, in a competitive major,
Yes.
and if we can just make sure that, like, the rent is paid, it makes so many more things easier and more accessible.
True. Absolutely. There's a lot of things that you've seen and uplift you and remind you, but what's one of the special moments from your journey that has really stayed with you?
There's literally hundreds, I will admit, but
Yeah.
couple of things. One, a young woman, we gave her a very small amount of money, like $500. And she said, she wrote us a note and she said, thank you. I know this doesn't seem like very much money to most people, but to me, it was everything. She's like, I had maxed out my credit card, so I was able to pay it off. Okay, so now she has credit. And then she said, I paid back my friend I borrowed money from. So now her relationships are in place. And then the third thing she said, which this really hit me, was I could finally afford a parking pass and go back to in person classes. If you're not showing up physically in the class, you're just watching the class on Zoom, you're not the person that professor is ever going to recommend when an alumni calls and says, I need an intern or I need to hire somebody. Because
Well, yeah.
they're going to see you as unengaged and uninterested. And it's literally simply because you can't afford to park.
Wow. It really puts things in perspective for everyone in terms of even trying not to judge. To say, oh well, they're not engaged just because they want to do it virtual. They didn't put forth the effort to get to school and sit in the front of the class. Um, it really opens up a lot of opportunities. And you're right. I think that if somebody does call to find an intern, or tell me someone's top of your class, and they're not gonna even know that person's name because they're not on the screen, or they're not even looking or talking to them.
Yeah,
That's
it's
an
the
important
FaceTime and
thing.
it's things like, you know, if all the study groups are taking place in the evening and you either have to work because you've got a waitress job or you literally can't afford the coffee or the pizza to participate, then you're not getting the same experience as your peers. And
No, not even
literally
close.
every university in the United States, every campus in the United States now operates a food bank, one or more food pantries, which
Mhm.
seems like a great thing. Oh, isn't it great they're giving kids access to food? But if you think about it, we are the richest country in the world. And our students are so hungry, we have to operate food banks on our college campuses. Like,
Yeah, I've
we have
absolutely been
dining
on a
halls. We literally have dining halls throwing food away. Yet we're like, you walk over there and get 3 packages of ramen a week, right? And so I feel like we as a country have got to get back to investing in the productivity of our people through education more now than
you
ever, given
say that
what's
again,
happening with
real
technology.
loud. Say that again real loud.
Um,
Like,
I feel that we as a country have got to get back to investing in the productivity of Americans through education.
absolutely. That's
100%.
very
Because
important. Absolutely.
that was the
I would
foundation of the land grant universities, this idea of how do we make Americans more productive? And now we are an information economy. We are not going to be a farming economy. We might try to be a manufacturing economy, but those days are gone. The reality is our economy is led by information, and we have got to have educated citizens to operate, not only operate safely, but operate effectively in the modern world. And education is the key to that.
absolutely, I agree. It was interesting, like you were talking about the food banks on campus, and I was on campus. I'm not going to say which one. A very wealthy campus with a fantastic football team that makes millions every game, and they have a section of the region of their campus that is a gigantic garden for food insecure people that are students that can't afford to eat even on like student loans and stuff like that. And I could not even comprehend what kind of thinking would have made that happen. When you what you just said, like, feed them, make them not worry about the money, the food, so they're here to get a fantastic education. Like, there shouldn't be anything to worry about with that, for sure. I agree.
100%. And also
Mm.
the disconnect there, like the incredible
Yes,
disconnect and the scarcity mindset. So I think this is really important. We built our organization on the idea of abundance, right? There's an abundance of talent out there, but the opportunity is distributed unevenly, right? So if you take an abundance approach to who is worthy of investment and an abundance approach to what that investment might do, right? So we don't police what they do with the money. If they need to buy interview clothes, great. If you need to buy gas for your car, that's fine too. If you need to get your teeth fixed, do that. I don't care what you do with the money. Are in, if you have a shot at getting this degree that is going to change your life and your economic circumstances, we will help you get there. And the shocking thing is the cost to do this is $2,883 per person.
Yeah,
Like it's
that's it.
such a small amount of money. It's 1 month's rent for most people. It's a small amount of money, and it is literally
Get them to graduate, to
that
get them
one
over the
graduate
line.
will earn an additional $2.4 million over their lifetime because of that less than $3,000 investment.
You were the first person to bring that up to me, and a couple other people have touched on it, but you really broke my mind open when you discussed, like, yes, we get him a job, but that's not it. Like, you are adding to the economy in ways that I don't think a lot of people understand. With someone just graduated college, but they didn't get a job. These people are graduating and getting jobs, six figures, Microsoft, Apple, like that's a, and then like I'll let you explain what you talked to me
Yeah,
about
so
how that.
what we have done is we've looked very carefully at what are the dimensions of economic impact of our investment. And this is not by any stretch all the economic impacts, because there's also like they're buying cars and homes and putting their kids in the schools. There's that as well. But we know for sure, based on federal data, that each one of these graduates will earn in their first year an additional $32,458 over what they would earn with some college and no degree. We also know that over their lifetime, very conservatively speaking, that extrapolates to 2.4 million in additional earnings. It creates
And that's lowball.
500, yeah, $569,000 of additional retirement contributions. They pay $624,000 of additional federal tax, and it saves the government $857,000 of social service costs, such as unemployment insurance, incarceration, you know, public assistance, all the things that they become economically net positive to the country because we
Yes,
invested $2,883.
it's such a good
Like it is
amazing.
it is hands down the best bang for your buck. And also literally driving the innovation economy, right? If we don't have the talent, global companies are going to offshore that work. Like Google has offices in Ireland and India and other countries. They don't need to hire their engineers here. And if the engineers aren't
Right.
here, they won't hire them. So if we're not producing the talent, we're not going to be capturing the industries that want that talent. And so at this point, the US is leaving nearly 14,000 students on the table each year. So we're losing 13,800 juniors and seniors in engineering and computer science annually because of money, because of small
Okay.
financial shocks like car repairs and lost time at work or an illness, something. And just to make this like really stark, after the Michigan State shooting, 3 weeks after the Michigan State shooting, we got dozens of applications from students who said, my job shut down for 3 weeks because of that shooting. And now I can't pay my rent, or now I can't eat. It wasn't that that student was directly a victim of the shooting. They were a victim of the like societal impact of that disruption. So whether it's a natural disaster like a hurricane or a fire, like we stood up a fire after we stood up a fund after the LA fires to help the students who like lost their clothes or lost their cars or lost their housing because of that fire. The speed at which FEMA is going to get you resources, you would have already graduated by then.
Facts. That's true. Right. That's sad. You had mentioned about you don't care when, like, you don't police where they go with the money and interview skills or clothes or get the teeth or whatever. I had spoken to Mia Davis of Dress for Success Austin today, and they have branches all over the world. And I was really impressed with the fact, like, all the clothes that are donated, and they make sure they're the right colors, and then they dress people and they make them feel different and and presentable for interviews. And I think that'd be an interesting, like, marriage of just like to meet her, meet that group and to understand that they're pretty much in every state, I think. And that might be something that would help also so that there's nice, classier types of clothes to go to the interview in and maybe the interview skills and that happens and just kind of like each person helping each other. But I think that's part of what me making these phone calls and the podcast is like I can make connections and link people now that will help each other and just like we talked about earlier. But your passion for what you do is obvious. And I want to know, like, in terms of the business models and longitudinal, like you've worked with other groups, not just last mile, how have you implemented, you know, a model that you know works in a nonprofit organization? What would you tell somebody if they were building a nonprofit organization and they had limited resources or they were struggling? What would you tell them?
Well, the first thing I tell anybody who's thinking about starting a nonprofit is, have you done the due diligence that you would do if this was your money?
Right. That's
Because
good.
I constantly meet people who are like, "Oh, I see a problem. I have to solve it. I have an idea." But they haven't applied the same amount of rigorous market analysis and research to knowing that there isn't already somebody else solving the problem, or there isn't potentially a network that they could leverage to solve the problem. And so I'm sort of famous for saying, your lack of research does not equal a market opportunity. Um, I have an MBA and I consider myself a social entrepreneur. So I am very focused on applying a business practice and approach to how I solve problems and thinking about the ROI and thinking about the scalability from the beginning and thinking about the data and the impact measurement from the beginning. I think the very important thing is, how do you know you're actually having impact? And, surveys that people say I had a nice time is not impact, right? So, how are you actually quantifying the value of what you're doing? And is your solution necessary? I founded initiatives inside other organizations for 20 years before I founded an organization. And the only reason I founded this organization was because no one else was doing it. And I made sure of that because,
You're very good at it.
yeah, you do not want to try to like compete, right? So, one of my big soapbox moments is I spent many, many years in K-12 education, and there's all of these programs being created, like, a maker camp or a coding club or all these little one-off efforts. And I'm like, the Girl Scouts have 3 million girls meeting with 2 adults once a week.
Mhm.
They have hundreds of camp facilities. They have 1 million volunteers. They have 70 million alumni. Collectively, between the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, 4-H, and Campfire, there are 30 million kids. That's 2/3 of all the kids in K-12 in the US are in those organizations. So if you want to get anything, whether it's like running or reading or bicycling or coding to kids at scale, you put it there. Like, instead, what is
Brilliant.
often happening is because of ego or because of sense of ownership, people keep launching new things. And I'm like, why are you building Radio Shack when we have Walmart? Like, we literally have the Amazon of youth education, which is the out of school time youth infrastructure. And that is the best place to deploy your content at scale. And so the thing I encourage organizations to do is think about, like, what are the levers you could pull to achieve what you're trying to achieve without building duplicative infrastructure,
Okay.
right? So an example
Yeah,
of
it's
this is
example.
I launched a program called JROTCCS. Okay. So the junior ROTC is in 3,421 high schools across the US. Every one of those junior ROTC installations has two teachers, two former military, retired military that are JROTC instructors paid for by the military. So the school gets this instructor for cheap. They have a 1 to 70 student to educator ratio. The ratio of school counselor to student is 1 to 454. So the ability of the JROTC instructors to influence the kids is extremely high, right? So I was like, okay, if I want to get computer science education to thousands of kids, there's 545,000 kids in the junior ROTC. What I did was go through, well, I wrote and passed a federal law, but I put an amendment in the Defense Act that created a program for the Department of Defense to fund computer science in junior ROTC high schools. And now there's hundreds of millions of dollars that has flowed through this process into these 3,400 high schools, which, by the way, serve 4 million kids in total.
That's incredible.
So, like, I'm like, if you think from the
That's how you
beginning
measure impact.
about scale, right? So you have to think about,
Yeah.
what is your data collection? How are you proving that your thing works? And have you designed it for scale? Like, if you create a program that costs $20,000 a person, scaling that's going to be super hard,
Yeah.
right?
True. Yours is
Oh,
3,000,
yeah, but
right?
still, like, if you
Rough.
really have to just think very hard about, like, is what I'm designing something that should be scaled, or should it become part of the constellation of organizations that are supporting people at the grassroots level, which is completely fine.
I see.
But if you're looking to, like, be national or scale up, then you need to design for that from day one.
Great. Like, I'm learning more in a month than I would spend 4 years at school. Like, just by doing this properly, talking to the right people and listening and using technology that we're gonna be doing to take all of that amazing information. It was kinda like a book you just went through. You know,
Well, but
it's here's the guide.
you could literally take the transcripts of all these podcasts, pop it into an AI, and turn it into an instructional course, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the goal, is to, like, pull all of the brains and the genius for it and put it together. Like, here's how you build the most awesome nonprofit foundation. Eventually, we got to get into, like, the grants, the processes, the donation, the writing, finding the grants, figuring out dates and times. Like, that's a whole nother beast. Right? And trying to find people who are excellent at it, who can actually talk through the process and make it easier. You're talking about tech and AI, and I was talking to the data foundation head of communications for them today. And the open data that should be there for attaining grants, going after grants. And if it could be made easier and more accessible, then we can help more people. Plus, there's money left over every year in these coffers, from what I'm told, that are in these grants, and some people know how to really go after the grants and some people don't. So it'll be interesting to learn from people who are fantastic at that part of the nonprofit world, and to begin to learn from them and put them on these podcast interviews too.
Well,
Because you have yours dialed in,
I think that
obviously.
there's in our case, I raised most of this money on, you know, reputation and prior performance. Like, I've been a good spender for a long time. And what I mean by that is, when someone awards you money, the last thing they want to have to do is take it back. And
Right?
every person who is giving you money, unless you're getting it from the actual rich person themselves, any person who is giving you a grant or giving you some kind of gift, they have to answer to somebody above them. And so if you make it your job to make sure that your funders never have to question, boy, I gave that money to Ruth and now what's happening? They shouldn't ever ask themselves that question. They should know. And you should be giving them tidbits all the time, that anything that they can like send up the
Mm.
chain and be like, look at this impact, look at this article, look at this outcome. So that when it comes around once a year to be like, why did we give these people this money? That person has an answer.
Yes. You routinely stay relevant to your donors. You routinely show repeated impact and you build the credibility in that, and you continue to build that relationship also. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And the way you said it in terms of like someone above them is going to want to answer, why did we give that money? Oh, this impact, this change, this, you obviously have the numbers in your head, just like bam, bam, bam.
Well,
You've,
yeah,
you've had
I,
that from
I'm
someone.
particularly good at that, though. I will admit that age is having an impact on my ability to keep so much stuff in my head anymore. But um,
I was
I can
almost
still remember my
very, very
phone
grateful.
number from second grade, you know? But
Me too.
I
Yeah.
think that if you think about it like
Where
a subscription, right? You know how you have those subscription services and now there's services you can pay to help you find and get rid of all your subscriptions, right? Like
Yeah, not funny.
when that subscription renewal comes around, you're going to be like, wait, did I really get any value from this subscription, right? So it's the same kind of thing with donors. Like they have a certain amount of money to give out, and the programs that give them the most uplift are the ones that get more funding. And also the programs that, file their reports on time, are forthcoming with details and keeping things moving and keeping the donors informed, super important. And then I have literally a texting relationship with many of my donors where I will just text them and be like, oh, here's a great quote or here's a great outcome, because I'm genuinely excited about all the stories and outcomes.
Oh yeah.
And
I
so I'm just
I
like,
get it. I see that here at Journey House when somebody's walking the hallway and they've been clean for like, let's say 27 days, and they're getting and they've never been past 25, like they've gotten something figured out, and it's such an amazing thing. And to have 14 years of sobriety and to know someone with a 27 and know what they're going through, and you want to share that, and to so that that's one thing that I'm rebuilding here at Journey House, is that the impact that we're making, we need to show to our donors. And when really great stories happen, we need to spotlight that in the newsletter or another video and get that to our donor base so that they know that it's not a transactional thing. I feel like it's more transformational. I know that sounds cliche, but it's a much better way to understand that relationship with these folks who are helping us be able to get bedding, get beds, pay rent, food, and all the things that come with the overhead of a nonprofit organization, and paying yourself well and your employees, developing your employees, getting them the training they need so that they can become a manager of their own team of people so we can continue to grow. Um, it's been a fascinating journey so far. I mean, it's only 6 weeks, but man, I feel like it's this big fire hose and I'm just drinking from
it
it.
is a huge fire hose. And I'd say the hardest thing is managing your team, and especially if you have a small team, because we're only 10 people and there's not a lot of vertical growth opportunities with 10 people. I can't have 7 directors out of 10 people. And so that's challenging to like have levels for people to move up in the organization. And in some
Hmm.
cases that move is out because they've like exceeded the capacity we have for them. And so I think managing a small, lean team is hard. And also, obviously, we try hard to compete on benefits, but we certainly can't compete with corporate salaries and
Yeah.
or equity. You're not giving anybody any stock options. And so you know, finding the right people who understand the intangible values and benefits that you're getting out of working for social good that drive you. Like for me, that's all I've ever wanted to do. I could certainly go be an in-house corporate CSR person or go work as a consultant with my credentials, but I feel like this is so important that I can't let it go until I've got, an endowment that will keep the organization going for 5 years, and then I could.
You only have 10 people, and the impact you're making is incredible. Like, if you just mathematically, each person is insanely valuable to the future of these folks that are graduating and getting jobs. That's amazing, and that is the same story I hear from every phone call is like the the rewarding feeling in your heart and your soul that you can live your faith, live your beliefs, live like really push for a mission that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in a corporate job. And we have that leash or that ability to do that in a nonprofit world as long as we have solid business models and solid employees and training and processes in place and operations and of course technology to make the business run as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to um be thinking about it like a business, though being clear that your outputs are humans, most often humans or animals or the environment. And so some of those drivers do and do not work. I mean, there's often this like, if only a business person came and they would just solve this problem. I'm like, well, actually, our output is human children, or our output is college graduates who are human. So there's a side of it that you really have to bring the empathy. Um,
By the way,
yeah, but I
yeah,
think also, doesn't matter what you're doing. I really recommend that every organization has figured out their ROI, meaning their social ROI. Like, what is it that you are solving for society that nobody else is solving? What is the role that you're playing? And like in your case, if you get somebody sober, they will have a more stable family life. They will have more stable employment. They will have a longer life. They will contribute more. Like there's all the different ways that they're going to be um, a net positive to society. And so thinking about it from that perspective, and you can say, like, yes, we're spending this much money per person, but what that's going to create over this person's lifetime for themselves, their children, their families, and their communities. Like figuring that
right.
out is really important. And especially in this fundraising environment, being able to show what the impact is with both data and stories.
You hit the nail on the head. This has been a really good conversation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm
Like
always
it's
happy to talk about
so
our work
intelligent.
and our young people and all the cool things they're doing. And
And it's interesting, like you're I think we had said this on the first phone call, like my mom, my sister, my niece are superpower women in Ann Arbor. And my niece is absolutely brilliant tech brain and will sit on the porch and go through Power BI and just start building these things. She's fantastic. She went through U of M and graduated and got a job, I think in cancer research and this stuff. And it was, you know, they're gonna watch this, they're gonna just gonna laugh and giggle, and then they're probably gonna call you, but because you are exactly who they are. Like my mom runs with this group of she has Zoom calls with these professors and these very intelligent people, and they have these incredible conversations, and they wanted to build a podcast, and they call me like, "How do we do it?" And I was like, "Don't overthink it. Just just do it. Just record stuff." Because, like, very important things are being said by older the generation above in front of us, however say that, and we can't lose their wisdom. It needs to be recorded, and it's important for that. And so, the stuff that you're doing and your vision of how it impacts not just that one person, but the entire economy is fascinating to me. I really appreciate your insight.
Well, and I can close with a story of one of our students. So I saw her a couple weeks ago. Her name is Estella, and Estella is first generation from South America, and moved to the New Jersey area with her family. Her high school didn't offer a computer science class, so she'd never even taken computer science before going to college. She got into NYU, so that's no small feat by itself. Like, she got into NYU, and while she was there, she started in psychology, and then she tried data science. Then eventually, she found her way to computer science, which she loved. But by the time she got there, she was too late to finish the degree within her scholarship, because a lot of scholarships are just 4 years. It's not set on, like, finishing the degree, it's on 4 years. So we helped her go to some summer classes, and so we paid for the summer classes that were outside of her scholarship so that she could graduate with her class. But because of taking those summer classes, she wasn't able to do an internship, and an internship is pretty critical to getting a job. So come the summer, she went back to being a nanny. And I talked to her and I was like, "Hun, you have got a clock on you. Like, if you're not in a job in technology within 6 months of your degree, then your skills start to get stale because technology changes so fast." So we sent her to
Good
this
point.
conference, and she walked out of that conference with 3 job offers. Today, she is making nearly 3 or 4 times what her mother makes. She is the first woman in her family to ever have her own apartment, and she's bought her mom a car, she's gotten herself a nice apartment, she's living on her own, and, like, if you think about that investment in Estella is gonna change the trajectory of her children's lives,
Yes. Yes.
not to mention her
Absolutely.
whole immediate family and her siblings and her cousins and everyone around her and seeing that role model. But when I saw her 2 weeks ago, we had a meetup in New York City. There was another young woman who was at NYU who was a senior, and after the event, Estella stayed behind over an hour just talking to and mentoring this other student and sharing her
Wow.
knowledge of what it's like to get a job, what it's like to work in the field, what it's like to graduate, and that time that they spent together, priceless. And that
Mhm.
bond and that
Right.
networking. And so, Estella's well into her job at one of the big banks, and hopefully Mona will be following in her footsteps soon. But they're forming a professional network that's going to last the rest of their lives.
That's cool. Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Eric,
Way
for
to send.
having me. And I'm excited to see the
Absolutely.
the book or whatever you're going to write, YouTube series. I don't know.
My goal is to learn as much as possible, get Journey House very vibrant and growing and helping people. And at that point, like, the more I learn, I'm going to share it with everybody as much as possible. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible what everyone is willing to teach me so far.
Well, I'm
So,
happy to be part of that. And you have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye to all your listeners and your mom and
you
your
too.
sisters.
Good night.
Good night.